Hey, what's up? It's Matt for 360 Investigations, and welcome to episode 2 of A Journey in the Making. This is a series where I take you, the viewer, with me on a step-by-step process on everything I'm doing to get ready and go on a through hike of the entire Appalachian Trail starting in the second week of March of 2025. Now, you'll notice that my hair is always a mess on these. I'm not shaved, and that's because I want to give a completely natural look to basically what you're going to wind up looking like on a hike. Because if you're going to do this, I want you, the viewer, to fully understand and be immersed in everything I'm doing. That is why in this segment I have dedicated it to words, phrases, their meanings, and definitions. Too often you'll be watching a hiker video or something like that, and you'll hear them say something that you've never heard before that is strictly wording for the hiking community. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, and some of them do define it. However, if you're going to be watching somebody, it's a good idea to have a list of, things that you're going to be going over in case your viewers are not familiar with it. So I've done a lot of research on this, and I wanted to get as much as I possibly could for this list. But keeping in mind, it's not the full list. There's going to be stuff I'm missing, but I wanted to keep to the key points in this, current stuff, things like that. As you can see, I have an entire list here. Because when I do these videos, I want to make sure I get as much information to you, the viewer, as possible. So, without further ado, let me begin by explaining I have put this in order, starting from numbers, then going from A all the way to Z. And so, that being said, let me start by giving you what's called a half-gallon challenge. Half-gallon challenge is basically the halfway point in the Appalachian Trail where hikers basically celebrate it by eating a half a gallon of ice cream. A lot of them, if you watch the videos when they do it, they kind of feel really sick because they're eating a half gallon of ice cream, and I guess it's got to be done in a certain amount of time. I'm not really sure on that, but rest assured that's not something I'm ever going to be partaking in, because it's just I have a strict way of doing this, which I'll explain in future videos, things like that, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. So that's basically it. All right, next you may hear this is Altra. Altra is A-L-T-R-A, and it's a shoe company. So when you hear Altra, they're referring to footwear. You can look that up, but that's basically what it is. The next major point is the approach trail. Approach trail is not actually part of the AT. But people like to do it. It's in Georgia. There isn't one in Maine. At least I don't think there's one in Maine. But in Georgia, it's basically an 8-mile stretch where people would go up the hill or go up the pathway. They would get to the one of the hotels up there. And then they would stay in the hotel, and then they would go outside the hotel right out and start going to their hike. That's basically what they do. And the approach trail is kind of a set up to give you an understanding of kind of what you're in store for, because that's basically what it is. It's not part of the trail, but it's an additional 8 miles. People don't care. Some people do it, some people don't. So I personally am going to be doing the approach trail, because once I do this, I'm never going to do this again, but I want it as part of the experience. Okay. Next is something called banana blazing. Okay, banana blazing is a term where females chase males, hence the term banana. That's, if you happen to hear that, that's what that is. All right, next is base weight. Now, there seems to be a lot of misinformation about base weight, okay? So let me clear this up. Some people will say base weight is everything except for the clothing you have on, or they don't include the backpack. It's just the straight up weight you have that you're carrying before you add food, water, and other necessity, things like that. It's just the main necessities you're taking with you. But let me explain. Anything that is not a usable item, such as food and water, is your base weight. What you have on, what your backpack weighs, everything are all part of your base weight. People will tell you that's not true, but that's the way I'm leaving it with this. So when you hear base weight, you have to include the items you have on, as well as the weight of your backpack, as well as what is in it, minus the food or water. All right. Next is bear bag or bear box. A bear bag or bear box, or I should also add container into that. Basically, what it is, it's supposed to be something you can put your food into that a bear can't get at. Basically, a bear box is a box that keeps bears out. That's part of the campground or camping area that you're going to. That's basically all that is. A bear sack is something that has to be tied up over a tree. And so a bear, is it bear box, bear sack, bear container. Bear container is a bear-proof container that is not hung over a tree and it's not put in a box. It's something that you put your food in, a bear can't get at. It's a canister. And so you basically put it about 200 feet away from your campsite in a place that you can find it. So that way if a bear gets it, they're not going to be able to get into it, things like that, and it doesn't attract to the campsite. That's basically all it is. All right. Blaze. And you just heard me say banana blaze, but they're in alphabetical order. All right. A blaze is a marking on the Appalachian Trail, and they have different colors for different things. A white blaze is the main trail. Blue blaze leads off of a separate path to camps or campsite with water, things like that. Yellow, I'm going to get into that afterwards, but basically that's what there is: yellow, blue, white, pink, banana. And I have a few more on this list, but that's basically what it is. A blaze is a mark on the trail that marks something specific off or on the Appalachian Trail to or from a destination. That's basically all it is. It's a paint mark, and you'll see them. They're striped. All right. Blue blaze, what I just explained. Blue blaze is, again, a pathway off to a campsite or water. It leads off of the main path where you would go from a white, you see a blue mark on a tree or whatever it is, and you go that way. All right. They're usually spread out consistently throughout the trail. So one of the base rules is if you haven't seen a blaze marker or a white blaze marker in about a mile, turn around and go back because you're going the wrong way. All right. Bounce box. Bounce box is basically a box that you put various things in. It's mainly done with medical supplies. And what you're doing is, the term bounce means you're taking it and going from one place to another. You're sending it ahead of yourself. So you're basically bouncing the box ahead. So what you're doing is you're taking what you need out of it, putting stuff that you don't need in it that you're not going to need for the next, until you get to the next section. You mail it ahead, and then you basically bounce the box ahead. So when you get there, you can either refill up or anything else. So they basically take a giant medical supply, put it in this box, and then just use that throughout the trail when they go out and get it. That's when they get to the next town or whatever it is. Okay. As with anything, I explain everything, no matter how gross it sounds. A cat hole, C-A-T-H-O-L-E. A cat hole is basically a place where you dig a hole to take a shit. That's all it is. And the base rule for this is you have to go about 200 yards away from any campsite or water and dig it around 6 inches deep. That's it. I know it sounds gross, but that's what a cat hole is. All right. A challenge. All right. Now, the reason why I brought this word up is because challenges don't have like, oh, you get noticed for them or you get an award for them. They're personal things that you choose to do that you can do with or with other people. Nothing's going to happen if you fail it. You're not going to get thrown off of the trail. There is no award for this. It's a personal thing that has somehow become part of the trail, such as the half-gallon challenge. It's just become commonplace. Some people partake in it, some people don't. But it's a personal thing that you're not going to get recognized for. It's just something if you choose to do that you want to do, it's going to check off, and that's it. There was a challenge that I am personally going to partake in, and I'll explain that when I get to it on the list, but I just want you to know it's a personal thing, and it's basically the only thing I'm going to do on the trail as far as a challenge. All right. The Connecticut Challenge. Connecticut Challenge is obnoxious. There are people who've done it, but basically what it is is you are going 50 miles in a day. I think it's like 50 or 60 miles in a day. So basically you're cutting through an entire state in one 24-hour time frame. It's obnoxious and I would never recommend it, but that's just me. But I just want to let you know that's what it's there for. So again, you're not going to get an award for it, but that's about it. All right. Now, I'm into the D's, just so you know. All right. So Damascus Marathon. That's a challenge that I personally am going to pretty much do. And all that is, it's going 26 miles in a day. That's it. Hence the term marathon. A marathon is basically a distance of 26 miles. And it starts in Damascus, Virginia, and then I forget exactly where it ends, but that's pretty much what one of the challenges are. I'm going to do it because it's already on my way, and it's going to be one of the only times I'm ever going to walk a 26-mile day, because I have no intention of ever walking 26-mile days, and that's basically it. So that's my personal challenge that I'm going to attempt, but if I don't get it. I don't do it, I don't do it. Well, that's basically it on that one. Next is dispersed camping. Okay, this one's a little tricky because people confuse it with stealth camping, which is something else on this list. But basically, dispersed camping is camping outside the normal campground perimeter. The difference between stealth camping and dispersed camping is still basically legal because it's still within the confines of the area you can camp. It's just not in the actual designated part of where the campground would normally be. Stealth camping is actually camping. I'll get to that afterwards, but I just want to let you know dispersed camping is not stealth camping. People confuse the two of them because they think they're one and the same, and they're not. So again, dispersed camping is camping outside the normal area that people are camping in just to get away from them, to see if you could do it, or to see if you want it more quiet, or whatever it is. There's various reasons people do it, but that's what dispersed camping is. Okay. Next is something called empty miles. Empty miles are miles traveled that's not hiking, that are going away from the trail. For example, they're miles that are generated that are considered not part of what you're actually hiking to go to a store in town. Let's say you got to an area where you got to ride to town. Those are still miles, but those are considered empty miles because they're not actually part of the hike you're doing, as far as going from point A to point B or going from Georgia to Maine. Even though it is still going there, it's considered empty miles for the fact that it's not on the trail. And so there's various reasons people do it. I've heard everything ranging from, we've already hiked this long, why do we need a ride to town, to I just don't feel like it because I want to give my feet a break, or whatever. That's basically what empty miles are. Okay, next. This one has confused me for the longest time, and I still am not quite getting it because my mind is still wrapped around the concept. And that is fast drying, or quick drying, whatever it is. These dry fast. All right, so just to be clear, when you hear the term fast drying, your mind hits about 1 hour, 2 hours, and it's dry. Okay, so this is where I'm having an issue with, because fast drying has a very specific, I guess, minimal time on the trail. That's the way I'm putting it. I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm saying, to put it into perspective, fast drying, as far as an hour or two, doesn't actually apply to the trail. The trail has its own definition of fast drying, which is things that dry relatively quickly within the confines of the trail, which is kind of weird considering your shoes. If you get them wet, it still takes like 8 hours to dry, which I don't consider fast drying. But on the trail, that's actually considered fast. A day or two is still, I guess, considered fast depending on what gets wet. It sounds really weird to have like a 2-day thing called fast drying. That just doesn't make sense to me, but that's what it is. So I just wanted to bring that up because I have a problem with some of these. It doesn't make any sense to me, which it'll make sense on the trail. I get it, but I have to actually experience it to understand it fully. But I get it, that 2 days on the trail or, 8 hours on the trail for drying something is actually considered fast. So, all right. Next is FKT, which stands for fastest known time. That means it's the time that everybody is aware that's been recorded for somebody actually doing something at a certain speed. So I'm not really sure what the fastest known time for doing the entire Appalachian Trail on a through hike from start to finish, but I think it's like 4 months or something like that. It's really short. It can be done, but that's by hardcore dedicated people that are just trying to get an accomplishment. I don't know. That's basically it. Okay. Now we get into flip-flop. This is a very bizarre way to do the trail. What flip-flopping means is you're just changing direction and you're going back and forth between specific points on how you're doing the trail. And there is no set pattern to do it. You're just going to various parts of the trail and doing them, then getting a ride or a lift to another section of the trail and then completing that. So what you're doing is you're doing a state or a section of the trail, then leaving it, going to a different section or state and doing that, and then going back and forth. So let's say somebody wanted to start in New York. It sounds weird, but they start in New York, then they travel to Georgia after doing New York. They do part of Georgia, then they go back up to New Hampshire to do that, and any way that they actually can do it. So there is no set way to flip-flop, but that's just what flip-flopping is. It's doing one section of the trail, then leaving it to go do another one, and another part somewhere else, then going back and forth. They do this because it breaks up the scenery, gives them a break on it, and things like that. And I guess apparently if you still do that in a 12-month time frame, it's a through hike, I guess. But that's basically what flip-flopping is. It's a bizarre concept, but whatever. All right. Next, Green Tunnel. Green Tunnel is the nickname for the Appalachian Trail pretty much because most of the time you're in trees. You're under trees. It's the Green Tunnel. And so with that, this is why a lot of people say who's done it, don't take solar panels or anything else because you're under very, very few times where you have complete out in the open sun or whatever. Take what you want, but that's basically what the Green Tunnel is. It's a nickname for the Appalachian Trail because it's basically mainly you are in the woods almost all the way through. It's Green Tunnel. All right. Next, we have, in the H's, hiker hunger. Hiker hunger is the hunger hikers get. It's not a normal hunger. What it is you get hungry when you every day you need to eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever, and snacking. But hiker hunger is something that happens where you actually get hungrier than normal, even though you've already eaten. So it's almost like you need an additional 2 meals during the day because that's just what happens when you're on there. That's hiker hunger. Next is hiker's midnight. This is a bizarre concept, but if anybody's ever gone camping in the woods, summertime, wintertime, whatever, it gets very dark very early. So what you have is hiker's midnight is when it basically gets dark and you go to bed. That's pretty much all it is. So basically, hiker's midnight is usually around, it can happen anywhere from 7 o'clock at night onward. But as soon as it hits pitch black, that's basically hiker's midnight. Everybody should have already it's usually a good idea to set your camp up prior to that when you're doing that. That's basically hiker's midnight. All right. Next, should be obvious, but I'm going to go over it anyway, is hostile. That's not the movie, and it doesn't mean you're aggressive. That's not what it means. A hostel is a privately owned cabin, so to speak, along the trail, which the owner of it offers hospitality to hikers for a fee. Sometimes they can work for it or for a fee or whatever it is, where they can exchange it for laundry, a place to sleep, shower, things like that. one thing I want to point out about the hostels, and I'm going to be going over this in another video, but I just want to bring this up for now, is that I've had discussions with hikers and people about, the Appalachian Trail where they say hostels, because I've made videos about hostel and hotel hopping. A lot of hikers have the misconception that hostels have always been part of the Appalachian Trail, and that is not true. The original reason hostels were on the trail was for forest rangers. They weren't even for hikers. They were for forest rangers that had to have a way to get out and live in the wilderness in case they needed to get to another hiker or they had to watch out for forest fires or whatever. But it was never actually meant for hikers. It was meant for law enforcement or park rangers to have a place to stay while they were out there. That's exactly what it was for. And it just gradually got into privately owned, and now we offer it for hikers. Just wanted to clear that up. I'll go over that in another video again. All right, now I'm on to the L's. You may hear the phrase load lifters. You may have heard me say that in one of my videos about the backpack I have. But basically, load lifters, for the most part, they lift the load. And they're in the shoulder straps. And they require a backpack with a frame to use, because what the load lifters do is when the backpack is fitted correctly, I'm gonna show you this in the video I'm gonna have when I do my backpack. But what they do is they take the load off your shoulders, they redistribute it through the frame, and then it redistributes where the frame ends is around your hips. So basically it's redistributing all the weight off your shoulders back down to your hips. Around your belt line, or where the around the waistline of where the pack belt line is. The waist holder for the pack, whatever that was. Okay, so anyway, that's basically it. That's what a load lifter is, and they work wonders. Believe me, it's really worth it to get it. So, all right. Now, next is the M's. You may have heard this is merino wool. Merino. It's basically I guess apparently it's a sheep. I'm not sure. It's a very specialized type of wool where it dries quickly and it absorbs smell. Now, a lot of the hikers basically you don't take cotton on the trail. Don't do that. A lot of the hikers use merino wool because, again, it lasts longer, it dries faster, it keeps you cooler when it's hot, and keeps you warmer when it's cold, because it takes the moisture or the sweat and everything, the dampness, away from you. Some people mix polyester and merino, but that's basically the reason why merino wool is so popular for the trail. And coincidentally, Darn Tough socks are made of merino wool. All right. Next, I'm going on into the N's. Nero Day, N-E-R-O. And that stands for near zero. A zero, I'm going to get to that afterwards, but basically it's a near zero day. It's a day where they nearly do anything, any miles or anything like that. All right. Next is NOBO, N-O-B-O, stands for northbound. It's the direction of travel that I will be doing when I go on the hike, because I'm going from Georgia to Maine. I'm going northbound. That's what that means, NOBO, northbound. All right, now into P's. All right, permethrin, or permethrin, however you want to pronounce it. Permethrin is a common bug repellent. It's not actually a bug repellent. It's a chemical that is used on the trail because it mainly repels ticks. So hikers will treat their clothing with permethrin, or permethrin, however you want to pronounce it. And what a lot of people, I'm going to take the time right now, what a lot of people don't do is they don't treat their tent. And that's an issue. So usually they'll treat their backpack, their clothing, and I suggest you do your tent, because as soon as a tick goes on an item coated with permethrin, it just basically dies within like 10 seconds. It's dead. So they do it to repel ticks. What permethrin also does is it's kind of a mosquito repellent as well. So it's a really, really good chemical. However, you have to be extremely cautious with it because it will give you cancer if you get it directly on your skin, if you continue using it for a prolonged time frame. My friend actually got cancer from having that, even though it was prescribed to him, because you're not supposed to put permethrin directly on your skin. So if you do it, please be extremely careful and follow the directions and get medical advice before you do it if you're not sure of what you're doing. All right. Next, pink blazing. You heard of banana blazing? It's when a woman chases a guy. Well, pink blazing is when men chase women. And yes, both of them refer to having sex on the trail. That's what it is. I told you I'm going to be honest with you, and that's just the way this is. All right. Privy. It's short for privacy, basically. That's what I'm calling it. I don't know if that's true. I'm calling it that, but it's an outhouse. That's it. It's a privy. It's literally an outhouse. And believe me, you can smell them when you're near there because they stink to high heaven. I know this because, again, I was an avid camper. And yeah, it's quite ripe. I'll just tell you that. When you're near it. It's so, yeah, I'm not going to get into detail. If you haven't smelled one, I really wish computers had scent chips and these you could smell. I'm just kidding. No, it's really nasty, but that's basically what it is. It's an outhouse. That's what it is. So, all right, moving along. Now we get into R's. Starting with R value. You may hear that a lot. And there's some discrepancies about true R value, does R value, whatever. And I'm not actually sure what the R stands for, but basically it's a rating. It's a warmth rating, and it's usually found in sleeping bags and air mattresses. There are some mats that I guess have it, but they're far and few in between. So apparently one of the things to check is the air mattress and the sleeping bag, because the higher the R value, the warmer it keeps you. And one of the main things on the trail, or main things when you're camping any direction, the main thing you want to keep in mind when you're camping is you need to keep yourself off of the ground. Even in the summertime, you need to keep yourself off of the ground, because when you're off of the ground, the cold air is what basically gets you from underneath. It's not the top. So again, R value has to do with the warmth level of your sleeping bag and the the air mattress, because a combination of both of them gives you a pretty good R rating. The higher the R rating, the warmer it is, and the better it is. So, all right. Next is Rocksylvania. That is basically Pennsylvania because it's covered in rocks. A lot of people that do this trail cannot stand Pennsylvania because it's basically non-stop rocks. Go look it up. And they call it Rocksylvania. Okay, roller coaster. The whole entire trail basically is a roller coaster because it's up, down, up, down, up, down. That's really what it is. But there is a specific section where it really gets bad. It says now entering the roller coaster. So overall, but then there's a section that it's really bad. And I can't remember the section, but that's basically what it comes down to. All right. Roll top. For those of you old timers, no, that's not a desk. Roll top refers to the top of some backpacks roll up and they clip. Those are actually, to be honest with you, the better types of backpacks than just a fold, because when you roll it, it gives you more control and more of a way to compact things in or give you extra room and things like that. It's pretty unique. It's actually on the backpack that I have. Again, I'm going to go over my backpack once I make that video. But that's what, when you hear roll top, that's what that means. All right, going on to the S's. Here's a common phrase you'll hear, well, I think it's common, is scrambling, aka rock scrambling or cliff scrambling. That is the art of having to go on basically all fours and scramble up. It does exactly what it is. Some of the places you have to, because of the way the cliffs are, or not the cliffs, sorry, the way the inclines are, you have to go basically on all fours to scramble up. You got to kind of just like go up. So that's basically what it is. Think of it as Fred Flintstone taking off in a car. You're scrambling and then you take off. But yeah, that's basically it. All right, shakedown hike. A shakedown hike, I don't know why it's called this. It should be called a test hike. Basically, a shakedown hike is hikes that people usually go on prior to going on the trail to get a test on their gear, to make sure they can set it up, make sure pretty much they can handle everything it is. If their shoes aren't fitting right or whatever it is, they can fix that. That's basically all you're doing. It's a shakedown hike. Is your backpack good? Is your sleeping system okay? Can you use your system on water? You basically get a practice use on it. Now, I will tell you that there are areas in this country that kind of replicate the trail, but you're not going to get an actual replication unless you can't get a replication of the trail. The trail is unlike anything you'll do, so you can try to get close, but it's far and few in between. So right now there's a place that's being overcrowded because somebody happened to mention it, and then all of a sudden everybody's showing up on there. And I'm not going to mention what it is, but I just wanted to put that out there. That's what a shakedown hike is. All right. Next is shelter. Now this has a dual meaning. All right, so shelters are basically, for this purpose, is a lean-to made of wooden. It's a wooden structure. It's a shelter. It's pretty much, again, pretty much a wooden lean-to. And they're just open. You sit in them, do whatever you need to do, sleep in them. Usually they get overcrowded. And the shelters always have mice in them, always. The whole things are always overrun by rodents. So when it's raining, a lot of hikers just go in there, and it's a first come, first serve. It does get very, very crowded, and people will not give up their spot in there because there are people that try to cheese their way, I don't want to say cheese their way through, but what they do is they try to get people to feel guilty for them without bringing a shelter, and then they try to get somebody else to give up their spot and things like that. So basically, if you're going on the trail, don't rely on going in a shelter if that's what your plan is. Make sure you have a shelter with you. Shelter in this term is a tent. So again, it has a dual meaning. Shelter is basically a place you have that you can sleep in. And then there's also a wooden kind of hut on the trail. There's no screen doors on them, and they're not cabins. They're just open areas that protect you, that are put up there specifically for, lunch or resting or whatever. Okay. Next, this one pisses me off. It's slack packing. Slack packing is when you have somebody that you've caught up with, or a friend or a hostel owner or whatever it is, take your backpack up ahead for you, and then you basically are walking without a backpack or your pack or anything. You basically are giving yourself a break from carrying your backpack on the trail. That thing pisses me off, because if you're on the trail and you're backpacking, I get that people want to do this, but that's what you set out to do. And it just amazes me how there's so many of these safety nets that people keep using when their intent is to go out there. Now, I'm saying this now, but when I go out there, I'm going to probably wind up doing one of these things. I'm pretty much guaranteed. So I sound dumb right now, but who knows? That's it. So that's what slack packing is. And by the way, if I do that, I'll come back and apologize. I have no problems doing that. But again, it's right now, because of the way my mind is and because of how I've hiked, camped, and done stuff, it's just, it gets to me how people are, I'm going to go do this. And then they actually wind up basically cheating through it. So carry your backpack. Again, I'll probably wind up slack packing. Guaranteed. All right, so if I don't, I'll be amazed. All right, next is SOBO. S-O-B-O. It's the opposite of noble. It's southbound. It's when you're going from north to south. Pretty simplified. Okay, now comes stealth camping. Stealth camping, by its actual definition, and not the definition everybody's using, stealth camping is basically camping out of sight so nobody knows you're there. It's stealth camping. That has turned into camping out of bounds. I don't understand that. What camping out of bounds means is camping outside of designated areas. And this doesn't mean you are dispersed camping. It means you are camping in an area that any campground hasn't actually authorized for camping. And the reason why they basically do this for the most part is because of the vegetation growth and the plant life and stuff like that. So if you're in an area where you are not, quote, supposed to be, I don't know how they're going to and how they would ever enforce that. But it's pretty simple to actually see where plants are going to grow, to be very careful, because they basically set it up because they don't want you disturbing that area. So they want to regrow the wildlife and shit in there and the flowers and whatever. And that's basically it. But stealth camping basically by its definition means you can't see the person. So for example, if there's a cliff up here and you're down here and the trail's here, because you're not supposed to camp somewhere, you're supposed to be at least 250 feet from the trail or something like that. But if you're up on a cliff like this and you can't see and somebody's up there, that's stealth camping because you would never know they were there unless you walked up there. All right, so now, this is a weird word, is summit. S-U-M-M-I-T. Most people think they know what that means, but let me clarify that and see if you were right. All right, so summit, most of you are thinking is the top of a mountain, and that is true, or the top of something. However, summit has another meaning that people don't realize, and that is at the top of your game, meaning you're at the top of your list of things to do, or you've made the height of what you're trying to do. You can have your own personal summits, meaning you've got a goal and you've reached the top of it. It doesn't have to necessarily be the top, but when you're dealing with hiking and you're dealing with summit, to summit a mountain means you've reached the highest point on that mountain. Okay, you'll hear summit all the time, but I just wanted to clarify, summit doesn't always mean mountain. It does for basic hiking, but you can have personal summits, meaning personal goals you can reach the top of and things like that. All right, I'm now going into the T's. Let me explain by starting with Tent City. Tent City is exactly what it sounds like. It's a bunch of tents all set up in a crammed area, and it's just a city of tents. That's all it is. All right, so, and it's mainly found in something else I'll be discussing in the T's here. All right, the big three, which is now started going into the big four, but I'm just going to stick with the big three. The big three are the three pieces of major equipment you're going to need or want on the trail. Your backpack, your tent, and your sleeping system. That's basically it. People sometimes will put a fourth thing in there, and it varies for what you're talking about. And some people say it's, you know, your ground cloth all the way up to your shoes or whatever. There's various things on what the big four is, but the big three is the main thing that you need to pay attention to. It's your backpack, your tent, and your sleep system. That's what that is. All right. Topo, T-O-P-O. Topo is a line of shoe that is now starting to become mainstream and really get some, quote, traction, if you may. It's not the topographical map, as in topo map. Topo is a shoe company started by person Tony Post, and he took his name and created this shoe. Tony, T-O, Post, P-O, so it came up with Topo. So that's it. And also you'll hear Topo as in topographical map, as on these apps that you'll see on, you know, Far Out or OnX Backcountry, things like that. Okay, next is Trail Angel. A trail angel is basically a person who has either done the trail or wants to help people out on the trail or failed it or whatever it is and knows exactly what it's like. So they set up little things here and there, cookouts or barbecue, something that to stop and give hikers food and some water or whatever else it is. And they do it out of the kindness of their heart. They're, quote, trail angels. That's basically what it comes down to. All right. Trail Days. Trail Days is a giant festival held in Damascus, Virginia, and it's run for, I think, 3 or 4 days. And this is where you would pretty much see Tent City. It would just be wall-to-wall tents, and all sorts of people are there. It's basically a convention for hikers. That's really what it comes down to. You have the people that made, the apps, all the way to people who've given advice, to rescues, to things, to stories you hear, vloggers, just whatever. It's a convention. It's a multi-day convention for hikers held in Damascus, Virginia. All right. Next is trail legs. Trail legs are basically your legs finally getting a second wind, so to speak. What happens is you start out going slow, but eventually you just get so used to walking and walking and walking, your legs just automatically walk. You will eventually start doing more miles because you have built up the durability and endurance and the muscle and structure in your bones and everything else to withstand walking more. It just happens. It's basically packing on muscle and stuff. That's what it comes down to. So trail legs, that's all it comes down to. One thing about trail legs is once you develop them, if you basically stop, let's say you get sick and get off the trail for a week or whatever, you're going to lose them. And it's a pain in the ass to get them back again because it usually happens after 300 or 400 miles of walking. It's not something that happens relatively early. All right. Next is trail magic. Trail magic it's magic on the trail. You need some water. Oh my gosh, magic, there's water that appears. It's basically what it is. It's considered trail magic. It's where hikers and people just leave things at certain points, you could come across it. You could be walking and all of a sudden you'll see a cooler in the woods. Open it up, there's either water or maybe there's nothing in it. Oh, sorry. There's either water in it or, nothing in it, soda, whatever, just food items. It's trail magic. You just happen to come across it. Maybe something you need, maybe not, maybe nothing. Just appears. All right, next is trail runners. You will hear this, and I want to clear something up about this. Trail runners are a brand of shoe, but what most people don't know is they're actual running shoes. Running shoes are made lighter than actual regular sneakers. So when you hear trail runner, it actually means running. They are literally running shoes. Marathon people use them and things like that. People have adopted them for the trail because they're lightweight, they're, versatile, and they're cushiony, so they're not built the same as regular shoes. Regular sneakers, I should say. Okay. This word, a lot of people get aggravated with, and it does remind me of high school. And this is something that even though if I wind up in this type of thing, it's not going to last because I'm very stubborn. I like to be by myself, even around people, even when there's groups of people. And that is the word tramily. It's family with a T, and it's basically your family on the trail. That happens because when you're on the trail, even if you go by yourself, for some random reason, you naturally wind up gravitating to somebody you wind up hiking with. It's just weird. And so you may or may not run into that right away, or if you run into it, you may run into that several times before you find the right person or group of people that just basically hike at your pace. That's really all it comes down to, but that's what it is. Here's a fun one. Trampoline back. Okay, basically the trampoline back, I don't know why this is called a trampoline back, but what it is it's a space between, it's an arced frame on a backpack that keeps the backpack away from your back so it keeps airflow going through it. Now, one thing I want to clear up around here is that people seem to think that if you have an airflow through, you will sweat less. That is not true. There is no piece of material, equipment, or anything that will make you sweat less. Sweating less has to do with your heart rate, not any piece of equipment, because it gives an optical illusion. It gives the illusion that because you're cooler and you're not, it feels like you're not sweating, but your body's going to sweat the same whether you have it against your back or not. You just feel cooler, so it gives the illusion that you're not sweating as much. This would be like putting a fan on you on a hot day. You're not getting cooler. The fan's just blowing hot air. It just feels cooler because the temperature difference, it feels like a temperature difference because it seems cooler because it's blowing on you, when in reality, it's just blowing the same hot air. It just feels cooler. So you actually you're not going to sweat less. Your inside of your body does that. So people go, you sweat less. You don't. You can't. A backpack that has an arc in it doesn't make you sweat less. All right, so anyway, enough of that. This next one is a little strange. It's called Type 2 Fun. Type 2 fun, by definition, is basically something that sucks while you're doing it, but you know you got to get it done, and you're glad you did it afterwards. And looking back, you don't regret doing it. Well, at the time, you regret doing it. That's what Type 2 fun is. So people going out on the trail, and instead of getting off it when they feel whipped, they basically they push themselves through it. And then when they look back, like, oh, I am so glad I did that. It sucked. I wanted to get off, and I'm glad I pushed through it. That's basically what Type 2 fun is. All right. Next one, you've heard me talk about this one on my channel if you've watched it. And now I'm in the use, which is ultra light. I'm only going to go over this briefly, but I will tell you once again, ultra light has nothing to do with weight. Hikers have turned it into that. And the community is basically at war with each other when you have the ultralight community and the regular community basically bashing each other for not having too much weight or not having the right equipment. It's just a mess. All right, so basically ultralight is the amount of items you take with you, not weight. Again, I made a video on this. You can go look. It's called the Ultralight Lie. All right, or I should say Survival Correction. That's the name of the series I put it into, and that's it. All right, next is in the V's. This is called Virginia Blues. This is because Virginia, for some reason, whether you're coming from north to south or you're going south to north, Virginia's section completely sucks ass. It's one of the, it's bizarre, as screwy as that sounds, it's apparently the most depressing part on the trail for pretty much everybody. That's what it's called. It's called Virginia Blues. It's like, oh, I don't want to do this. It's like, it kind of like drags you down because it's such a pain in the ass. So that's what Virginia Blues is. All right. Next is vortex. A vortex, by definition, is a thing, it's whirling, it's like a whirlpool, it sucks you in. And it has an appropriate name because hikers get sucked into a vortex in town where they go to town, not intending to stay there for as long as they do, and they get sucked up in the towns, you know, having fun, whatever, and they just pretty much get stuck. They just basically get sucked in, and not saying it happens to everybody, but it happens on occasion where you just get sucked in, and you have no intention of staying there as long as you do, and you're just having so much fun, you get caught up in it, and that's it. That's what vortex means. Okay, next I'm into the W's, and there's only 3 more things after this, so there's Y and Z, but now I'm into the W's. White blaze. As I said earlier about blaze, there's blue, white, yellow, pink, whatever, so forth down the line. So a white blaze is nothing but a white mark that is the trail itself. That's the main pathway on the trail. And again, the base rule of thumb is if you've gone a mile without seeing a mark, a blaze of any sort, you're going the wrong way. So you will see the white parts of the main branches, the main section of the trail. The blue ones branch off of that, and then they go in just different directions, things like that. So that's really what that comes down to. Okay, now I'm into the Y's. Yellow blazing, just said it. All right, so yellow blazing, think of the yellow double line on the road, okay? Now, I think there is a yellow mark on the trail, but I'm not sure about that. All I know is that I'm picturing the 2 yellow lines that are on the middle of a road. That's what I'm picturing. Yellow blazing is hitchhiking. It's skipping parts, however you do it. It's going from one section of the trail to the other without hiking it. It's basically skipping it. And it's done usually by hitchhiking, yellow blazing. Now I don't want to say it's a myth, but apparently there's something going around where at some point, anybody on the trail will wind up hitchhiking. And it could be for various reasons, whether the trail itself is blocked and the only way to get around it is to have that ride, or you do it because you need to get to town or whatever it is. So eventually at some point, what I've heard is every single person will yellow blaze whether they want to or not. And the people that are actually skipping the trail to yellow blaze to get through the trail are pissing off the rest of the people that are actually doing the trail. And apparently I don't really see what the big deal is, because everyone's like, hike your own hike. It's like, dude. And then they piss and moan when people do it. It just makes no sense. So anyway, that's basically what yellow blazing is. All right. Now on to the Z's. There's only 2 left here. 0 day. A 0 day is when you actually do no miles at all. It's a day you take off. You take off from hiking. You don't go to town. You just don't travel that day. You just sit in camp for a day or 2, and that's it. That's all 0 day is. It's a 0 day with 0 miles. Any miles, doesn't matter. All right. And this is the last one. 0 drop. 0 drop applies to shoes. It's basically when your heel and your foot touch the ground at the same time. So picture walking around barefoot. And a shoe, you normally have the heel up, so the shoe is at an angle, so your foot is actually like this. So you hit the heel first, and then you go forward. 0 drop puts it straight, so it's the equivalency of your heel and your foot, the front of your foot are hitting the ground at the same time. It's basically the same as you were walking. It's in a shoe, but you're walking around barefoot. That's what it comes down to. Not that you don't have padding. My point is that when you're walking around barefoot, instead of doing this, you hit the ground at the same time with the front and the back. The shoes are set up so there's no arc in it. You just hit the ground, the front and back at the same time. And if you're interested, the closest shoe you can get to 0 drop without actually having 0 drop, I believe, are Crocs. I actually have a pair because I'm going to be using them, because I'm going to go over this in another video, but I have some problems with my feet I need to work out, and I want to share exactly how I'm doing that in the next one of the upcoming videos. But this has been a very long video because there's a lot of terminology and stuff like that I wanted to absolutely make sure you understood. And that's basically it. And the episode 3, which I will be putting up, it's going to also be an extremely long video. It has to do with YouTubers and how I basically do research. So that will be, I already know that's going to be my next video when I do the 3rd episode of this. And I just don't know when that's going to be, because again, as you watch the series, I don't know when I'm going to wind up putting these up. But as the time gets closer, that I will be putting more and more videos up. But for now, I don't want to put up too many videos and have nothing else to talk about it. That's it. So, till the episode 3, it's Matt for 360 Investigations, signing off. Have a good one. Thanks for listening.